So, traders, I want to talk to you about something that happened today on a phone call today with the gentleman, and I want to talk to you about the conversation we actually had today. One of the biggest mistakes that I'm seeing with a lot of traders who are trading the markets right now. We're talking about like his journey as a trader, and he's been part of the markets now for a long, like many, many, many decades. But it's only been the last 5 or so years that he's looked to get into more of the trading side of things. So he went down the path of looking at different option strategies, strangles and stuff like that. Now, the way that he was approaching the market was he was only looking for he was only looking for a small move and make a small profit, right? Small profit, small profit, small profit. So he'd get in there, he'd have a big position, but he's only looking for a small profit. Little small profit, little small profit. But then what would happen is the way that he was trading these strangles, I'm pretty sure it was, is the way that he was trading was, he'd be trading it and he might do well for 4 or 5 months, 6 months in a row, but one really bad month, and before you know it, he's rolling out. He's put it this way: one really bad month can wipe out many, 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 many months in a row, and that's the reason why he actually contacted me. The reason why he contacted me is because I actually have a group called the 1% group. Or most traders are in there, are part of the 1%. Me and my coaching clients, we're like the 1% of traders who actually do really well at trading. And so that's the reason why I have a coaching group to help them through what's taken me 20 years to figure out. If you're interested in joining that, if you go to getjohnshelp.com, you can apply for that. We can have a good chat. But the whole thing about talking to him, it made me realize one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of traders making is they're not thinking about the way they're going and approaching these markets. And when it comes down to, say, for example, that context, right? The context of this situation, this conversation here, of that it's so important that you want to set yourself up for long-term success in the markets. And so, like, the thing for me is I knew that if I want to do really well at a trading, I've got to start to put things into place that's going to help me do well at a trading. And one of those is that I need to be able to in certain times throughout the year, I need to be able to generate a really big profit. And so, and I need to be able to have small losses, right? That's the cornerstone of having a successful year, is having big profits and small losses. Now, when we go down to the spread strategies or strangles or something like that, a lot of the times, especially if we're looking for the very short-term moves, a lot of the times, we can be getting into a situation where we're having small profits. So you might have a high win-loss ratio, but you're making small profits. Trading a lot, making small profits, very stressful. And then all it takes is one bad month and you can get wiped out. I liken into the story of many, many, many years ago, actually well over 10 years ago. 10 years ago? Yeah, over 10 years ago, I actually went through a divorce. And through this situation, of going through this situation, for me personally, I was living with a shared accommodation place. And this one particular gentleman who I was living with at the time, again, this is well over 10 years ago now, I was living with a shared accommodation place. And when I was living with him, he was also trading the markets. Now, his strategy was to write naked put options. Essentially, if you guys don't know what that simply means, he was just saying, okay, I promise to buy 10,000 of these shares, and for that, I'm going to receive a credit. And it's like basically you can buy protection, or you can be the person on the other side receiving it, right? So there's that back and forwards there. And so one of the things I saw with him of the few years of being with him was that the way he was trading the markets was he'd have a really good 6, 7, 8 months, and one bad month would wipe him out. And he just couldn't get any traction. And so I liken it to the conversation I had today with the gentleman, is that it's so important that we approach the market every day for long-term success. And we have to think about how are we approaching these markets? How are we trading these markets? That's where with me, I keep it really simple. I keep it really, really, really simple. I just simply buy calls and I buy puts. And I buy plenty of time, and I buy I buy options that I don't buy like really risky options, right? So like short, all that sort of stuff. I mean, short term, like 1 week options, way, way, way out of the money options where they're really, really cheap. All that sort of stuff is a recipe for disaster, right? The way that I trade my options is a way where I'm lowering my risk. I buy plenty of time. I'm buying the type of option where I've got some, some buffer there as well too. So where I'm lowering my risk as well on that. Because the reason why is because I want to protect my downside. So if I can get out with the way that I like to trade, and if you've been following me now for the last few months, the way that I like to trade myself, because again, I want to set myself up to have a successful year. So and what that simply means is that the way that I like to trade myself is I want to be in a situation where I'm having small losses and big profits, right? So for me, just simply buying the option and letting the profit run, therefore I can have big profits over the course of, for me, it's more like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. That's the type of, that 4 to 6 weeks seems to be the sweet spot for me with these really nice, good, successful trades, right? And so what I'm talking about here is that, like, for example, I had a platinum trade that gave me 250% return on the trade, and that was about 4 weeks or so. But then if I have a loss, right, and I'm going to use this from a numbers perspective, if I had $10,000 on that platinum trade, right, that's a $25,000 profit, right? Now, the risk on that trade was only roughly 20 to 30%. So it's a $10,000 investment, right? As an example here, the profit was $25,000, but the risk is only 20 to 30%. So it's only $2,000 to $3,000. So if you look at the risk was only roughly $2,000 to $3,000 for a $25,000 profit. Do you see what I'm doing here? You see how I'm setting myself up? I'm setting myself up. Now, I don't always get that big profit, right? Lately, for the last couple of months, there's been some really big profitable trades, but sometimes it's only 80% profit, 100% profit. Sometimes it's like that. I don't know exactly what the trade's going to do, but I'm doing my best to maximize my profits and cutting my losses short and keeping my risk small. And if I can have that as a foundation going into the markets, now I'm setting myself up for success in the markets. Trading is difficult and it's hard enough. Then we want to go overlay these strategies where it's just not long-term success when I talk about the strangles and the spreads and stuff like that. And so what's really helped me do really well from trading is, one, actually having a good trading strategy in the first place, right? Like knowing what to look for in a good trading setup. That's the first and foremost. That's what makes my trading so good, because I know what I'm looking for. But then secondly, when I'm actually buying the options, I'm not limiting myself. There's no cap. That's the problem with like credit spreads. You might receive a credit up front day one, yeah, but you're limiting your profits, right? That's where like I've never gotten that. I need certain times. I need at least a few months throughout the entire year where I'm capitalizing on really big profits for me to have a successful year. I need that, right? We all need that. If you want to make a really big profit in the markets, well, then we need to have the ability to be able to have a big profit and small losses. And if we can have a foundational approach where we're approaching the market that way, where we're letting the profits run and cutting losses short, and we're not limiting ourselves when it comes to profits, now we're starting to talk where you can have 2, 3, 4 of good months and maybe have a bad month, but only eat out maybe 20% of your profits, etc. Make sense? So I'm doing this video because I really want to share with you and encourage you that I really want you to try to think about the way you're trading the markets, right? You want to set the game up to win. And what that simply means is that with trading, remember, trading is all about like a yearly process. It's never about a week by week process. The reason why trading is a yearly process, meaning like I look at it from a yearly perspective, is because whatever the way you trade, right? If you are following a strategy, and if you're not even following any strategy, then that's where you're probably going wrong. You're probably losing a lot of money. Um, that the thing is that firstly we follow a strategy. Most people don't. That's the reason I don't make money. But even when you are following a strategy, that strategy is going to appear different times through different months, right? One month there might be no trades. Next month there might be some trades, right? And so on and so forth. That's the ebbs and flows of trading. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's active, and so on and so forth. So, but the foundations of us doing really well this year, having a really good year this year, is we need to have the ability to be able to have big profits and small losses. If we can go into trading like that, where we're having risk in small on our account, but having the potential of growing our account. So I use the numbers as, for example, platinum, 250%. Let's just say, for example, I'll use a lower number here, say $100,000, right? $100,000, I had $100,000 in a trading account. And this is where I hope you can start to see here. And that $100,000 I put in, say I took 10% of that, $10,000, and I put it in the platinum, okay, as an example. Then I would then what? So the return was what? 25,000, right? On the 10,000. That's a 25% gain on my account in 1 month. Now the risk was what? 2 to 3,000 on the 10%, which is what? 2 to 3% on average there, right? Sometimes it's a little bit bigger, sometimes a little bit smaller, but it's on average there. So that's one trade by taking 2 to 3% risk on average, maybe a little bit more sometimes. The account grew by 25%. Now I have a much bigger account and all that sort of stuff, and I had a lot more money on that trade. But the purpose, I'm trying to bring it down to a much lower number. I'm trying to show you how I win at the game of trading, right? But then the very next trade I took was Groupon. Groupon, I was in it for about 4 to 6 weeks, somewhere over there. That was a 300% return. So let's do those numbers. $10,000 position, 10% of my trading account. It grew by it had a 300% growth. So that's a 30% growth on my account. Again, by taking what? A roughly 2 to 3% risk. Do you see what I do here? This is what I do here to try to make sure that every year I can have a really good year, because I need these. Now, again, traders, the most important part is you need to know exactly what to look for, right? You don't just buy any call option and hope for the best. You need to be able to get into a trade that's likely to make a big move. That's what makes my trading work so well, right? Is I get into trades that's likely to make a big move in the first place. Again, if you need help with all this sort of stuff that I'm helping you guys, then go to getjohnshelp.com, get JOHNS help.com. Yeah, you apply for my 1% group, and I'll help you when it comes to learning how to identify these trades in the first place and all this sort of stuff, right? But I'm trying to help you guys and try to coach you guys. Is one of the biggest things that I'm seeing too, even from the conversation today. And that's the reason why he was calling me today, because he was like, I can't do this anymore. It's just not working. Was the foundational approach was wrong. And remember, trading the market is difficult enough. So we want to do whatever we can to put the odds on our side. How do we do that? Firstly, we've got to be able to stick to some sort of trading system. If you're not disciplined enough with that, you're just not going to do really well at trading, right? But way that I like to do that is I like to identify trades that's likely to make a big move, right? Now, basically, but what that simply means is there's a pattern that I look for that when it appears, it's likely to make a big move. Platinum, all this sort of stuff, right? That's what I say through there. Now, I want to be able to approach that, identify that, where I can apply some leverage, like options, right? Where I can potentially start to grow 20, 30% of my account by taking in an average of a few percent risk on my account. If I can start to apply that sort of framework, one, I know what I'm looking for, and when it appears, it has the potential of making a big move over the course of the next month or so. And then I'm using the foundation approach to actually cut my losses short. If I can do that, then I'm going to have not only am I giving myself the best chance of having a good year this year, but now I'm tapping into becoming 1% of all the traders who actually do really well continuously, year after year after year. You have successful years, year after year, because your foundations and the way you're approaching this is set up the right way. So once again, one, know exactly what you're looking for. Again, if you need help, just contact me. But the big thing is that you want to be able to have a strategy where you can have big profits and small losses. If you're trading strangles and straggles and all this sort of stuff, and you're limiting your profits, you're making small profits through here, and you're doing spreads and so on and so forth. If you are, put it this way, if you are trading a strategy right now where you know deep down inside 1 or 2 really bad months can wipe out not only 6 months worth of profit, but actually send you a lot more back, well, you know that's not right? You're not going to be able to develop the confidence for long-term success in the markets.